If you garden in Central Texas, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked outside, coffee in hand, feeling proud of your garden, only to immediately feel your mood drop when you see what happened overnight? Leaves chewed down to lace, squash vines collapsing, tomato plants stripped like they were personally targeted. And the worst part, you know exactly what did it. Grasshoppers, squash bugs, caterpillars, beetles, but somehow they're never around when you're looking for them. Central Texas pests don't just visit your garden, they move in. I used to think that this was just part of gardening, that if I wanted tomatoes and zucchini, I had to accept constant damage, endless monitoring, and the feeling that I was always losing ground. I tried handpicking bugs, I tried checking leaves every morning, I tried researching sprays and treatments, and honestly, it was exhausting. But at some point, almost by accident, I realized something had changed. The areas of my garden where my chickens spent time just looked better. Fewer bugs, less damage, healthier plants. That's when it hit me. My chickens weren't just hanging out back there, they were working. And not in a cute, aw, look at them way. In a serious, system-changing, pest-controlling way. If you don't garden in Central Texas, it's hard to explain how relentless the growing conditions can be. On paper, it sounds amazing. Long growing seasons, warm weather, mild winters. But here's the flip side no one tells you about. Pests don't die off the way they do in colder climates. Many insects overwinter in the soil. Others survive in plant debris. Some don't really slow down at all. That means that every spring, you're not starting fresh. You're picking up where last year left off. Grasshoppers hatch in waves. Squash bugs hide under leaves and multiply quickly. Caterpillars chew through growth faster than plants can recover. And it's because the pressure is constant, gardeners often fall into reaction mode. You spray when the damage appears, you dust when the bugs get bad, you treat symptoms instead of systems. When I first got chickens, the pest control wasn't even part of the plan. I wanted eggs, I wanted compost scraps. I liked the idea of having animals as part of a backyard homestead. But chickens don't just sit around waiting to be fed. They scratch, they forage, they hunt. At first, I thought they were just being destructive. But then I started paying attention. Where the chickens scratched, the soil looked looser. Where they pecked, the bugs were harder to find. Where they spent time consistently, pest pressure dropped. Not disappeared, dropped. That distinction matters. This is where we get into the natural advantage chickens bring to the garden. And it goes far beyond pest control. Using chickens in the garden isn't about replacing one tool with another. It's about changing how the entire system functions. They reduce the need for pesticides, they aerate the soil and add fertility. They help create a healthier, more sustainable ecosystem. And that's what this video is really about. Not chickens eat bugs, but why that matters, how it changes your garden long term, and why it works especially well in Central Texas. So let's start with the biggest and most obvious benefit, and one that made the biggest difference for me: reducing the need for pesticides and chemical interventions. If you've gardened for any length of time, you've probably been here. You notice damage on a plant, you identify the pest, and you Google how to get rid of it. And 9 times out of 10, the solution involves some kind of spray, dust, or treatment. That's not because gardeners are lazy. It's because modern gardening advice is built around reaction, not prevention. Most pest control solutions are designed to be applied after pests are already established. By the time you see chewed leaves or wilting plants, the insects have already reproduced, spread, and done damage. In a place like Central Texas, where pest pressure never really stops, this creates a cycle. Bugs appear, damage shows up, you treat, bugs return, you treat again. Over time, this becomes exhausting and expensive. Chickens don't wait for an infestation. They don't need you to identify the pest first. They don't need instructions. They don't need perfect timing. They apply constant pressure. This is one of the most important concepts to understand. Most garden pests rely on population spikes that cause serious damage. When numbers stay low, plants can usually tolerate some feeding. When populations explode, plants collapse. Chickens help prevent those explosions. They eat adult insects, larvae, grubs, eggs, anything moving through the soil surface. That last part is especially important. Many of the worst garden pests spend their life cycle underground. Squash bugs lay eggs on the underside of leaves. Beetles lay eggs in soil. Caterpillars pupate underground. Sprays often miss those stages entirely. Chickens don't. I want to be very clear here. Chickens do not make your garden bug-free. If someone tells you that, they're overselling it. What they do is keep pest populations from reaching destructive levels. In my garden, I still see bugs, but I see fewer of them. I see less damage. And when I do see damage, it progresses much more slowly. It gives plants time to recover. It gives you time to respond. It turns gardening from a constant emergency into something manageable. Another reason I started paying attention to chicken-based pest control is what pesticides don't discriminate against. Most sprays don't just kill your pests you're targeting, they also affect pollinators, beneficial insects, predatory insects, and soil organisms. Ladybugs, lacewings, and parasitic wasps, these are insects that help control pests naturally. When chemical sprays are used frequently, they reduce those populations too. That creates a dependency loop. The more you spray, the fewer beneficial insects you have. The fewer beneficial insects you have, the more you need to spray. Chickens don't create that problem. They don't eliminate beneficial insects entirely, but they don't wipe them out the way broad-spectrum chemicals can. Instead, they become one part of a multi-layered pest control system. One of the biggest mental shifts for me was thinking about what I was spraying on my food crops. Tomatoes, zucchini, squash, herbs. Even organic treatments require timing, reapplication, and careful use. By relying more on the chickens, I reduced how often I felt the need to treat plants at all. That made gardening feels less stressful and more aligned with why I started growing food in the first place. This is one of the biggest lessons gardening with chickens teaches you. A system that applies constant, low-level pressure is more effective than one that relies on occasional heavy intervention. Chickens don't eliminate pests in one dramatic moment. They reduce them slowly, consistently, and naturally. And over time, that consistency adds up. Fewer outbreaks, healthier plants, less reaction. In climates with harsh winters, pests often reset every year. In Central Texas, they don't. That makes year-round pressure incredibly important. Chickens don't stop working when it's warm. They don't disappear in the summer. They don't need ideal conditions. They're out there every day doing what comes naturally. That is why this method works so well here. Reducing pesticides is a benefit most people notice first. But it's not the only advantage chickens bring to the garden. Because while they're hunting bugs, they're also doing something else. Something that completely changed how my soil behaves. If pest control is what gets people interested in using chickens in the garden, soil health is what makes them stay. Because pests come and go, but soil is what everything depends on. Healthy soil isn't just dirt. It's a living system made up of minerals, organic matter, fungi, bacteria, insects, and microscopic organisms that all interact with plant roots. When soil is healthy, plants are stronger, more resilient, and better able to tolerate stress, including pest damage. When the soil is unhealthy, plants struggle no matter how much you water, fertilize, or protect them. This is where chickens quietly make a huge difference. One of the most common issues in backyard gardens, especially raised beds, is soil compaction. Compaction happens when soil particles are pressed too tightly together. This reduces airflow, water infiltration, root expansion, and microbial activity. In compacted soil, water tends to pool on the surface and run off instead of soaking in. Roots struggle to push through dense layers, and beneficial microbes have less oxygen to survive. Over time, plants become weaker, more stressed, and more susceptible to pests and disease. This problem is especially common in high traffic garden areas or beds that are worked frequently. Chickens are constant scratchers. Every time they forage, they rake the soil surface with their feet. They flip mulch, break crusted layers, and loosen the top few inches of soil. This kind of disturbance is very different from mechanical tilling. It's shallow, it's irregular, and happens pretty frequently. That combination improves soil structure without destroying deeper layers. As a chicken scratch, compacted surfaces loosen, air penetrates deeper, and water absorption improves, and organic matter mixes in naturally. Over time, this creates soil that is easier for roots to grow through and easier for microbes to thrive in. There's a lot of debate in gardening circles about tilling versus no-till. Chickens occupy the middle ground. They don't deeply till the soil, which can disrupt fungal networks and soil structure, but they also don't leave the surface completely undisturbed. Their scratching mimics the natural processes you see in wild ecosystems, animals moving through, disturbing leaf litter, and mixing organic matter into the soil. This kind of disturbance helps decompose organic material, distribute nutrients, prevent soil crusting, and reduce compaction. It's controlled chaos, and the soil benefits from it. Yes, chickens fertilize the garden, but it's important to understand how and why this matters. Chicken manure is high in nitrogen, along with phosphorus and potassium, key nutrients plants need to grow. On its own, fresh chicken manure can be too strong for plants, but when it's deposited gradually and combined with mulch, compost, and soil microbes, it becomes part of a slow-release nutrient system. Instead of dumping fertilizer all at once, nutrients are added continuously in small amounts. That's better for plants and soil biology. Soil microbes are the real engine of a healthy garden. Bacteria and fungi break down organic matter, making nutrients available to plants. Some fungi form symbiotic relationships with plant roots, helping them absorb water and minerals more efficiently. Chicken manure feeds those microbes. As microbes process the organic inputs, they convert nutrients into forms plants can actually use. This creates a feedback loop. Chickens add organic matter, microbes thrive, plants grow stronger, healthier plants resist pests better. This is one reason gardens with chickens often improve over time instead of declining. One of the biggest benefits of gardening with chickens is that it improves compound. Soil doesn't get better overnight, but it does get better with consistent, gentle inputs. Over multiple seasons, you may notice improved soil texture, better water retention, stronger root systems, less need for added fertilizer. These changes make gardening easier, not harder. And in a climate like Central Texas, where heat, drought, heavy rains can stress plants, healthy soil is one of the most important tools you have. Stronger plants are less attractive to pests. Stressed plants emit chemical signals that attract insects. Healthy plants are better able to tolerate some feeding without collapsing. By improving soil health, chickens indirectly reduce pest problems even further. This is where the system really starts to shine. Pest control isn't just about killing bugs, it's about creating conditions where pests struggle to take over. Just like with pest controls, chickens won't magically fix bad soil overnight. If your soil is heavily compacted, depleted, or imbalanced, it will take time. But with consistent chicken activity, compost additions, and good garden amendments and management, the soil will steadily improve. This is a long-term investment, one that pays off season after season. So far, we've talked about reducing pesticides, improving soil structure, and adding natural fertility. But all of this leads to something bigger. Because when pest control and soil health improve together, the entire garden ecosystem starts to change. And that brings us to the final part of this video. By this point, it's probably clear that the chickens do more than just eat bugs. But the real shift happens when you stop thinking about them as a tool and start thinking about them as a part of a system. Traditional gardening advice often treats problems in isolation. You have pests, so you kill pests. You have poor soil, so you add fertilizer. You have weak plants, so you add more inputs. Each problem gets its own solution. But nature doesn't work in isolated pieces. Everything's connected, and chickens sit right in the middle of that connection. A healthy garden ecosystem isn't pest-free. That's a myth. Instead, it's balanced. In a balanced garden, pests exit but don't dominate. beneficial insects are present, and soil life is active. Plants grow steadily instead of struggling, and chickens contribute to all of these things at once. They reduce pest numbers without wiping out everything, and they disturb soil just enough to keep it healthy. They recycle organic matter back into the system, and instead of fighting nature, the garden starts to work with it. One of the biggest mindset changes I've had since gardening with chickens is letting go of perfection. Not every leaf needs to look perfect, and not every plant needs to be untouched. What matters is resilience. Resilient gardeners recover faster, they tolerate stress better, they don't collapse at the first sign of trouble, and when chickens are part of the system, resilience improves over time. Plants bounce back quicker, soil holds moisture better, and pest outbreaks slow down. That's especially important in Central Texas, where the weather swings can be extreme. The reason chickens help create healthier ecosystems is diversity. Chickens add another layer of life to the garden. They interact with the insects, soil organisms, plant debris, compost, and mulch. Each interaction creates small changes, and those changes add up. Diverse systems are more stable. When one part of the system struggles, the other parts help compensate. This is why gardens that include animals often feel more alive and less fragile. One unexpected benefit of gardening with the chickens is how it changes your role. Instead of being the constant enforcer, spraying, correcting, and fixing, you become more of a manager. You observe, you adjust, you guide. You decide where the chickens go, where they have access, and how long they stay. That shift reduces burnout. Gardening becomes something you participate in, not something you constantly fight. Sustainability isn't just about being eco-friendly. It's about what you can maintain year after year. Systems that recycle nutrients, manage pests naturally, and build soil tend to improve. Chickens help close that loop. Food scraps become feed, feed becomes manure, manure becomes feed soil, soil grows plants, and plants support insects, and insects feed chickens. That loop reduces waste and increases efficiency. In Central Texas, sustainability isn't optional, it's necessary. Heat, drought, heavy rain, and pests put constant stress on the gardens. In a system that depends on perfection, conditions won't last. A system that adapts will. Chickens add adaptability. They respond to changes faster than you can. They work in conditions where sprays fail. They don't care about heat indexes or humidity. They just do their job. Over time, gardens that include chickens often need fewer inputs, less intervention, less correction, and instead of resetting every season, the garden builds momentum. Each year starts stronger than the last. That's the real power of integrating animals into gardening. We've talked about reducing pesticides, improving soil health, and creating a balanced ecosystem. But none of this works without good management and realistic expectations. So before wrapping up, we need to talk about what chickens can't do. At this point, it might sound like chickens are the answer to everything. They eat bugs, they improve soil, and they make the garden more resilient. And while all of this is true, this only works if you manage them intentionally. Chickens are helpers, not robots. If you give them unlimited access without boundaries, they will absolutely test your patience. They will scratch where you don't want them to. They will sample plants you'd hope they'd ignore. And they will turn a freshly mulched bed into what looks like a crime scene. So let's talk honestly about what makes this work in the real world. The difference between chickens being an asset and being a disaster comes down to timing, access, and supervision. I don't let the chickens out in the garden 24/7. Instead, I think about where pests are more active, which beds are established versus fragile, and what states the plants are in. Young seedlings, chickens stay out. Established plants with strong roots, chickens can help. This is less about strict rules and more about observation. We quickly learn where chickens do the most good and where they need limits. One of the smartest things you can do is rotate chicken access. Short visits are better than long ones. Once chickens spend a limited amount of time in the space, they forage aggressively, they don't get bored, and they move on before causing damage. Think of it like targeted pest control instead of free-range chaos. This also keeps the garden from becoming over-disturbed. This part can be hard, especially if you're used to perfectly curated garden photos. Chickens will peck leaves, they'll investigate anything green, and they'll occasionally make questionable decisions. But here's the thing, A healthy garden can handle some damage. Perfection isn't the goal, productivity and resilience are. Once I let go of the idea that every leaf needed to be flawless, gardening became much more enjoyable. Even with management, even with occasional damage, the benefits outweigh the downsides. I spend less time reacting to problems, I rely less on sprays and treatments, my soil improves instead of degrading, and maybe most importantly, the garden feels alive. It's not sterile, it's not controlled to death, it's dynamic. That's a trade I'm happy to make. This approach works best if you enjoy observing your garden, don't mind a little mess, value long term improvement over short term perfection. If you want a pristine and touch garden with zero disturbance, chickens probably aren't the right fit. But if you want a system that improves over time and works with nature instead of against it, they're hard to beat. Before chickens, gardening felt like a constant battle. Now it feels more like a collaboration. I'm still involved, I still make decisions, but I'm not doing everything alone. That shift has made gardening more sustainable, not just for the soil, but for me. So when I say my chickens became the best pest control in my Texas garden, I don't mean that they just eat bugs. They reduce the need for pesticides, aerate and fertilize the soil. They help create a healthier, more sustainable ecosystem. They're part of the system now, not an add-on. And once you see the garden work this way, it's hard to unsee it. If you enjoyed this and you're interested in real garden progress, backyard chickens, and learning what actually works here in Central Texas, make sure to subscribe. I share garden updates, chicken chaos, experiments that work, some that don't, so you can learn right along with me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the garden.